Good evening, I'm political editor Dennis Welch, and this is Politics Unplugged. And tonight we are talking about immigration, and joining us today is Representative Tony Navarrete, Deputy Director of PromiseAZ, Arizona, and as we just said, a state representative. And just this past week, another case of a man detained by ICE agents here in Phoenix after he checked in with federal authorities as required by his work permit. Now, this man is Juan Carlos Garcia, and two of his three children, who are all citizens, are speaking out. They say their father has been in the U.S. for almost 2 decades and that he does have a work permit. They say he hasn't committed any crimes, and they do not know why he is being detained or what's going to happen next. They do point to the Trump administration's crackdown on illegal immigrants as the reason for the detention. We did reach out to ICE to try to find out why Garcia was being detained, but as of this taping, we do not have that information. And again, thank you for being on the show, and I just want you to know, just get your response to this, because this is very similar to another case that we saw just a few weeks ago when a mother was deported.
That's right. It's we're talking about Guadalupe Garcia, who was the other parent that was detained as well. And at the end of the day, you know, what is happening all across the country, not just here in Arizona, is that we're continuing to separate families. And that has a long-term effect not only on the communities but also on the children's lives. And I really do get frustrated with the president's administration, because as the leader of this country, he is supposed to unite us all, really. And what he is continuing to do is further divide every single one of us here in the country.
But the president had said that he wanted to go after criminals and what his words were, the bad hombres. But as of right now, all we know about him is that he was here legally with a work permit and hadn't committed any crimes. You know,
what the president does and what he says and what he does are completely different things. And I think we've seen over and over again that the words that are coming out of his mouth cannot be trusted. He has gone after immigrants, he's gone after refugees, he's gone after, our Native American community by accelerating the Dakota Access Pipeline. He is going after every single group. So, there's so much uncertainty that is coming out of this administration, and it's something that can't be trusted.
And what's your advice for immigrants that are in this situation? Because it seems like they're caught really between a rock and a hard place here. They have to go check in as required by their permit or whatever agreements that they have. But if they do, they also risk being deported.
Correct. And one of the things that we try to remind families is that there are a lot of resources out there. This weekend, I was with some of the consulates of Latin America. We had Honduras, El Salvador, Mexico, Guatemala, and other groups there that were really trying to be a resource to the community and providing their citizens some resources on how to make sure that they are not being illegally detained, just like we saw yesterday with Mr. Garcia, who does have a work permit to work in this country. Making sure that they are going through those right circuits. Of course, there's a lot of community organizations as well that are providing these resources. So I just recommend that every single family, visit their consulate, visit the organizations, and continue to stay involved. There's so much uncertainty and so much misinformation out there, but they have to continue to look at the information and read it for what it's worth, but be worried.
And for what you can tell, is there a clear policy under this administration when it comes to these types of deportations and being detained?
The only clear policy that I see is a policy of hate. So, anything that, like I said, our families here and all across the country, there's a lot of mixed status households. The two high-profile cases that we're seeing here in Arizona, they have citizen children. They have citizen children, and their parents are being detained. And that, you don't think that's going to have an impact on their lives? I was just talking to a school out in the West Valley, and they are telling me since the election, they have seen absences increase. And that's a problem when we're talking about our education. Right now we have so much to do as a state of Arizona and really all across the country.
Now, speaking of children, I want to talk a little bit about DACA. These are the kids that were brought here as young children through no fault of their own. And this administration seems to be sending some mixed messages here when it comes to those children. I want to play a little bit here of what President Trump had to say about that recently. Here it is.
We're going to show great heart. DACA is a very, very difficult subject for me. I will tell you. To me, it's one of the most difficult subjects I have, because you have these incredible kids, in many cases, not in all cases. In some of the cases, they're having DACA and they're gang members and they're drug dealers too. But you have some absolutely incredible kids, I would say mostly. They were brought here in such a way. It's a very, very tough subject. We are going to deal with DACA with heart.
Now, this really sounds like nice words and a tribute coming from the president, but again, there doesn't seem to be a clear policy here regarding these kids.
Yeah, and what I said in the past, a wolf in sheep's clothing is still a wolf. You know, so he can change the tone and how he says things, but at the end of the day, when he's saying one nice thing about having to use heart, he's still somewhat in there trying to label this community as criminals, as gang members. The truth is, immigrants, you know, they commit less criminal crimes than U.S. citizens do, and we have to be very careful about how we talk about this population. And yes, they are young people who are brought here at an early age, but we've seen time and time again that they are still being detained, and that's a problem.
Obviously, you probably watched the address here earlier the week. Any other takeaways from the president as you watched him speak about immigration?
Again, you know, there's tone, and then there's context, and then there's substance. And all you're hearing is a change in tone. But the truth is, you know, our families are still living in fear, and they have to make sure that they are, you know, preparing plans of emergency. You know, one of the things that we're doing all across the state is helping families create like an emergency plan. And that's not normal. You don't create emergency plans with families. That's not okay. And the same thing goes with our students who are, you know, who have grown up through the education system and are moving forward and educating themselves. They have to pay out of their pocket just to go to college, and they continue to do so.
Now, I want to play another bite here from the president, because obviously there's been a lot of attention to his softer tone, but when he's talking about immigrants, he's still talking about how immigrants are criminals. And I want to play this clip for you right now.
Joining us in the audience tonight are 4 very brave Americans whose government failed them. Jamil's 17-year-old son was viciously murdered by an illegal immigrant gang member.
Now, no one is going to deny, and certainly you wouldn't deny if there were 11 million people, you're going to have some bad apples in that bunch there. But is he overstating the case?
You know, when you try, as a leader of the free country, the leader of this free nation and a leader of the world, and you are continuously cherry-picking situations to scare the public, that is a problem. You know, I really wish that our U.S. senators, you know, Jeff Flake and John McCain, would really step up and really begin to defend all families here in Arizona. Because the truth is, not all immigrants are criminals. Not all Americans are criminals. So we have to be very clear about when we're discussing these issues that we're trying to find solutions. And until we have comprehensive immigration reform with the pathway to citizenship, we're going to continue to see families separated.
And he also talked about a website where people can go and see a weekly updated list of crimes committed by aliens here in this country. What's your reaction to that?
Again, you know, we need to always take care of the victims. The victims, at the end of the day, have to be respected and taken care of, and anything that we can do to take care of them, perfect. However, I do want to be very clear that we have to continue to think in a way that we are finding solutions to these issues. And, you know, completely putting all of the blame on undocumented immigrants is not the right message, and it's a false message. And it's a message that tries to instill fear in the American people. And that's not okay. Like I mentioned over and over again, you know, we're talking about the president who is supposed to unite this country, yet every single day continues to divide every single citizen in this country further and further apart.
All right.
I wish he could be more of a president, but you know, until that happens, you know, I will continue to be aggressively fighting to protect all families of the United States.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. We're going to have to take a quick break, but we have lots more to talk about here on Politics Unplugged. Coming up next, a runoff election for Phoenix City Council. We'll take a look at the issues facing the candidates, or candidate in this case, who want to help lead America's 6th largest city.
Ryan died as he lived, a warrior and a hero, battling against terrorism and securing our nation.
And some say that this is the moment Donald Trump proved that he's got what it takes to be president. Still ahead, Mr. Trump goes to Congress, here on Politics Unplugged.
He was a legend on the ball field and a leader in uniform. Now, for the first time, 3TV and CBS 5 are joining forces to honor Arizona's hero, Pat Tillman. Join us Saturday, April 22nd for the 13th annual Pat's Run, presented by Tech Systems. By supporting the Pat Tillman Foundation, you'll empower more Tillman scholars to become leaders for our country. Register now and continue Pat's legacy, and only from 3TV and CBS 5.
Macayo's Mexican Table, an Arizona tradition since 1946. Try our new Tijuana street tacos by Chef Eager for a limited time, and taste why Macayo's has been a tradition for 70 years. Macayo's Mexican Table, the name you know, the food you love.
If you've been waiting to purchase new furniture, American Furniture Warehouse is the perfect place to invest your tax refund. We offer the best selection of sectionals at the best prices. You'll leave our stores knowing that you've received the best service, lowest prices, and the best selection of lifestyle furniture and accessories. Come into any of our 14 locations and take it home the same day or have it delivered by our professionally trained drivers. Let your tax refund go further with the lowest prices anywhere, anytime.
Hey, check this out. Prices are even lower at Fry's. Yep, we've lowered prices on over 1,000 items. So saving is way easier. With lower prices you'll love on fresh produce. Low prices on our awesome brands. Low prices in every aisle. You're gonna love how easy it is to save with low prices every day at Fry's.
USDA choice beef ribeye is now $4.97 a pound, and 6-ounce cartons of blackberries are 77 cents each.
Home isn't just where you start and end your day.
It's where life imitates art.
Or music.
Or food.
Or whatever it is that inspires you.
Living Spaces invites you to explore this unique intersection of lifestyle and home through Behind the Design, a new series where we celebrate life and style through in-depth conversations, profiles, and stories.
We welcome you to become part of our community at livingspaces.com/behindthedesign.
Macayo's Mexican Table, an Arizona tradition since 1946. Try our new Tijuana street tacos by Chef Eager for a limited time, and taste why Macayo's has been a tradition for 70 years. Macayo's Mexican Table, the name you know, the food you love.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. And there is an election coming up that you may not have noticed, a runoff in Phoenix City Council's District 3. And with us today is one of those candidates, Chris DeRose. We did invite his opponent, Deborah Stark, on 2 different occasions and gave her 2 different dates, but she was unable to join us. And thank you very much for stopping by to talk a little bit about your race. And first of all, I got to ask you, why do you want this job?
Well, you know, I come from a great city that failed. Like many residents of Phoenix, I come from someplace else. My hometown is Chicago, and Chicago has made some serious mistakes. Politicians look toward the next election rather than the long-term health of the city. They raised every tax that they could. They sold off everything they could. They drove out their business base, and the city failed to grow. And for the 2nd year in a row, it's actually been the population center which has lost the most young professionals. And Phoenix is making the same decisions. They've raised taxes 4 times in the past year, and still have a projected shortfall going forward, and still can't meet our urgent public safety priorities like putting 500 more police on the street.
Now, gotcha, I wanted to stick with crime here, but first of all, District 3, now this is basically encompasses a large chunk of Northwest Phoenix, correct?
Yeah.
And so we look at some of those areas, there's a lot of high crime areas within that area. What are you going to do about that?
Absolutely. Well, I can tell you, if I'm elected, I'm the only member of the City Council who have law enforcement experience. I'm a former felony prosecutor for the Attorney General's office. I think it's an important perspective that I bring to the table, and I think there's no substitute for more police on the streets. We're 500 police short of where we were in the economic downturn in 2009. Probably need at least 1,000 for a city of our size and population. And so there's no substitute for cleaning up our streets like having more police out there. Now, in the interim, we can work with neighborhood block watch organizations. You know, I served on the Neighborhood Block Watch Oversight Committee for Phoenix. These groups play an important role in supporting the police in their vital work.
How do you talked about, you know, getting more police there up to 1,000 now. How do you do that without raising more taxes?
You have to prioritize, and the city continues to waste money. I'll give you just one example. The city built an affordable housing project this year. It cost $281,000 per unit. The most expensive apartment building ever sold in the whole history of the city of Phoenix was about $20,000 per unit, less than that. It was the building next to the Esplanade. So the city council continues to waste money, continues to do things that don't fall under the appropriate role of city government, and fails to address our urgent need to get these police officers on the street.
Any price tag to that? Have you done the math on that, and how much it would cost the city to get, recruit, train, and put 1,000 more police officers on the streets?
So for about $5 million, you can get 40 new police on the street. Because I figured that out because they paid for body cameras this year, $5 million. Not something I oppose in principle, but I would rather have those 40 police out on the street rather than having body cameras.
That seems like a pretty hefty price tag when you start talking about $500 to $1,000, though. If it costs $40 million for or $5 million for 40 officers out there, you start doing the math on that. That's pretty expensive.
But that's the #1 thing that the city of Phoenix needs to do, and so it shouldn't be doing anything else until we fund our first responders, police, fire. To me, I'm going to judge my success as a councilman and the council's success collectively by what happens when you dial 911.
All right, let's move on to some other issues here. Now, you've been out walking neighborhoods, talking to constituents out there. What's, other than crime, what are the top issues that you're hearing from them?
Well, the voters are fed up with paying for 4 major tax increases in the past year, particularly people on fixed incomes. But the city of Phoenix is trying to raise every tax that it can. Now, there's a proposed food tax down the line. We can't have any more tax increases if we're going to continue to grow as a city. The other major issue is the sanctuary city. The City Council voted on February 15th to have an executive session, which of course won't be open to the public, to meet with their lawyer to challenge Arizona's law against sanctuary cities. My opponent voted for that. I would have voted no. I don't think that Phoenix should be a sanctuary city.
I was definitely going to ask you about the sanctuary cities and where you were, particularly on that issue. Would you vote for Phoenix to become a sanctuary city, and would you hold these meetings behind closed doors?
No, I think those meetings should be in the public, and I'm happy to tell the public how I feel about it. Phoenix cannot become a sanctuary city. I echo our police's concerns that it would not only be a threat to public safety, but I would add it would jeopardize critical state and federal funds at a time of a budget crunch.
Okay, and moving on to another issue that seems to be percolating here a lot is public monies to finance sports facilities out there. We're seeing this, you know, with the hockey arena out in Glendale. The Suns have been talking about getting in a new arena. The Diamondbacks have been in a fight with the county and been looking to the city to maybe take over the operations of that over there. Where are you with when it stands to putting public money into sports arenas?
I'm opposed to it. There's no money available to pay millionaires and billionaires for sports stadiums.
Would you be willing to lose a team over this, like the Phoenix Suns?
If we had to, but I do want to say I would like to do everything we can short of that to try to keep them. They're an important part of our city. I'm a huge Suns fan. I like going to games. I love having it downtown, but there is no public money available for this.
Sure, but some people say if you do invest in some of these projects like that, your ROI, your return on investment is pretty good with something like that. You get people coming to downtown. We've seen that growth here in Phoenix for the past decade. More and more people are downtown, and some of that reason is for some of these sports facilities. So wouldn't that be a good investment?
Investing in these stadiums has always been a loser for these cities. Just look at the city of Glendale. I mean, I think there's an increasing awareness among city councils and decision makers that these don't have the stimulative effects that are promised, and the taxpayers are left holding the bag.
Okay, is there anything else that's on your radar screen that is one of the top 5 priorities for you?
Yes, public pensions. So obviously we have to keep every word of our commitment to people that we've made for our city employees. We value them. I'm a former state employee. My mother's a retired public school teacher. Living on a pension. We're going to keep every word of our commitment to those who have retired or are already in the system. But looking forward, we're at a point now where 25% of Phoenix's budget is paying these legacy costs, paying for retirees. And that's unsustainable in the long term if we want to avoid what happened in Chicago, what happened in Detroit, what's happening elsewhere.
All right, that's all the time we have. Well, good luck in your runoff election.
And get in your ballot by Wednesday, March 8th.
All right, thanks for that. We have a lot more here to talk about here on Politics Unplugged. Just ahead, Mr. Trump goes to Congress. What he laid out and why some say this is what it took to prove he can be president. And school vouchers. The president touted them as a way to help every kid get a top-notch education, but a bill to expand them has run into some problems here in Arizona. A closer look at Arizona's experience with tax credits and private schools.
LG, official corporate partner of the NCAA, wants you to do game day right by bringing you and 3 guests to all 3 Final Four games right here in Glendale. Visit Spencer's TV and Appliance to enter for your chance to win. Contest ends March 25th.
Where should you start when you're told you have cancer? Start with a specialist. Start where you'll find advanced technology, precision treatment options, and truly compassionate care. Start here with a team of experts who treat only cancer. Every stage, every day. It's not one thing we do. It's the only thing we do. Start at Cancer Treatment Centers of America in Phoenix. The evolution of cancer care is here. Learn more at cancercenter.com/experts. Appointments available now.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
What if you could lose fat in just a few hours?
I don't know what to say. I'm just in shock.
You can with Sono Bello.
It seems no matter how much you work out or diet, there are parts of your body that just don't seem to change.
I went to the gym, I worked out at home, I bought videos.
No matter what I did, that bulge was still there.
With its advanced micro-laser technology,
Sono Bello gently removes that targeted fat and shapes your body for life-changing results.
With over 100 board-certified plastic surgeons, Sono Bello is the largest and most experienced group practice in the U.S.
Seeing ain't believing. I don't know what is.
After 5 years trying to get rid of that roll of fat, Sono Bello did it in one day.
Call for your free no-obligation consultation today and get $250 off your Sono Bello body.
Payment plans are available.
Call 888-403-5932 or go to sonobello.com.
What has lasted 5,000 years was once almost lost. Now, the world awaits the divine culture's return.
Shen Yun, coming to Phoenix Orpheum Theater, March 14th through 19th. Buy tickets now at shenyun.com/Phoenix or call 800-880-0188.
It's Spencer's biggest sale all year with your chance to be a Spencer's Big Four finalist. Win tickets to the Final Four right here in Glendale and 3 other grand prizes. Everyone gets additional rebates, extra discounts during this giant sale on all LG products at Spencer's. Visit spencerstv.com.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. It's now time to talk it out. With us today is Laurie Roberts, columnist and reporter for the Arizona Republic, also political consultant and recovering journalist, Chip Scutari. Yes. Thanks a lot for joining us here. And we did start off this show by talking about immigration. I wanted to get your thoughts on this father who purportedly has done nothing wrong and was here in the country legally, goes to ICE for his annual checkup and gets detained.
Well, we don't really know a lot about this specific case. It's a single father of 3 children, teenagers and a young adult, goes into ICE for a regular check Thursday morning, and is detained. An ICE agent comes out with a bag of paperwork, hands it to the kids, and said, "Daddy's not coming home with you." We really don't know a lot about it. The kids say that he had applied for asylum, but he's been here for 20 years, and that he had a work permit. So I think we have to see more. But what this is yet another example of what seems to be going on all over the country, which is not the really bad dudes that we hear about that Donald Trump says, bad hombres, but fathers and mothers and laborers and people who really haven't caused us a lot of problems. So,
and Trump talked a lot about that during his speech here last week, but it didn't seem like it was he made anything clearer, did he?
No, I think you know, to the Laurie, to add to what she was saying, is this inconsistent policy is really devastating to families all over the country. So the one thing the Trump administration and Congress can do is get together, figure out what they're doing on these cases, or otherwise there's going to be a lot of division in the country, even more so, and a lot of families are going to be split when maybe they shouldn't be.
But you know, because I'm a glass half full kind of gal.
You are?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Imagine that. I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to put it out there, though, that Donald Trump actually could be the best thing that has happened to this whole immigration issue. Sure. He has signaled at times that he is softening on this. This last week, he even in a private meeting with TV anchors talked about how he'd be willing to compromise, and if the other side would compromise, come up with a path of legalization. That is something that Democrats have never wanted to do. They've wanted full-throated citizenship. On the other hand, you've got the Trump people who allowing, you know, they want to deport them all. If they would come off of their amnesty thing and say, yeah, we'll come to a middle ground, we can solve this.
To your point, it would be kind of hard to accuse Donald Trump of being soft on immigration and amnesty. I mean, almost like a Nixon goes to China kind of moment, but with immigration, right?
Yeah, I think, but for President Trump, you know, the old journalism adage, you know, I'm a recovering journalist, show, don't tell. And he's at one press conference, you played it early in the show, saying, I have great heart for these DACA kids. And then in the next, you know, several minutes of his speech to Congress, pointing out, when this poor, son or daughter was killed by an illegal immigrant. So there's massive inconsistency. He has to put it together. He has a Republican Congress now. Let's see what he can do.
All right. Now, I also want to talk a little bit about that speech, about the tone there. Everybody's making a big deal about this, and there's particularly one moment there when he was paying tribute to Navy SEAL William Ryan Owens. Of course, he was one of the men who died in Yemen during that raid there. Now, he was very respectful. He mentioned the wife who was in the audience there. I wanted you to take a look at this, and let's get your reaction on the other side.
He became President of the United States in that moment, period. That was one of the most extraordinary moments you have ever seen in American politics, period.
That was Van Jones, former cabinet member with Obama, a Democrat there, saying that was the moment he became president. Do you agree with that?
I don't. I was surprised Van Jones said that. I know he was former Obama aide. He's been very critical of President Trump. I think, have we lowered the bar so far in this country where if you give a speech with a moderate tone, you become presidential? I mean, give me a break. No way. He has to accomplish something. He has to do things. He can't, there's the Twitter Trump, which can be mean and vindictive, and there's a teleprompter Trump. He has to prove he can be presidential 24/7, 7 days a week, month in and month out. I disagree with Van Jones.
And I also think that he's got to back it up with actions. I actually thought that the speech was, and I agree with you that we've set the bar pretty low, I guess, but I do think that he sounded presidential. He looked presidential. He talked more morning in America rather than America in mourning, I thought. He set a vision, which was so vague but broad, but I think that he has tapped into what a lot of middle-class, working-class Americans fear, and, if he can unite us. I love the fact that he's talking about uniting us.
Now, also in the audience, there was another young woman who had benefited from school voucher programs. These are tax finance mechanisms that can send kids to public and private schools. And Laurie, you've been following one bill very closely this year. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, Senator Debbie Lesko has a bill in the legislature that would expand our already existing voucher program to all Arizona students by the year, I think, 2020 or 2021. It comes up every year. Last year, it looked like it was going to pass, but the notion that it might hurt Proposition 123, which is, of course, Doug Ducey's baby, derailed it for the year. So now it is back before the legislature. Looked like it was fast-tracked and the skids were greased for the thing, but it's run into a couple of obstacles. The first being that JLBC, the legislative budget analysts, have attached a fiscal note to it because it will cost money. If something costs money, you can't just consider it in a vacuum.
About $24–25 million would come out of the general fund for this.
Well, by 2020, it'll be $45 million. Yeah. So that means you have to consider it as one of the budget bills. You can't just consider it in a vacuum. That makes it harder. And the other thing is that you have 17 votes in the Senate. You've got 17 votes are needed. You've got, 16 votes are needed. You've got 17 Republicans. I'll get it eventually. One already has decided that she's not going to vote for it, Senator Kate Brophy-McGee. That puts the limelight on to Bob Worsley, who is waffling, does not appear to like the bill much, and there is heavy, heavy lobbying going on at the moment.
And speaking to that, the New York Times also took notice of a story that has been around here in Arizona for a long time, Senate President Steve Yarborough, and how his personal finances have benefited from these private school voucher programs.
Yeah, as we talked about before the show, we've known this story for a while, but Arizona's conflict of interest laws are so lax that he's technically not breaking the law. That doesn't make it right or ethical, but he's not breaking the law. But getting back to the bill, I think it has a potential to exacerbate the educational inequality in our state. There's pockets of excellence here, but when we have these vouchers, it would probably help out upper-class, affluent families much more than a single mom in South Phoenix. So that's why hopefully the bill will die in the Senate.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for joining us, but that is all the time we have this week. Be sure to stop by next week for more Politics Unplugged. Good night.